Hey everyone, this is Alex Slosby, class of 1996, and I'm excited to continue our series speaking with Noble's innovators and entrepreneurs in our community, graduates who are doing great things in their fields. Today, I'm excited to have Desert Horse Grant with us, a fellow classmate of mine from 1996. Hey, Desert.
Hi, Alex. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Desert's part of the executive team at UCLA Health. She's co-executive director of UCLA Biodesign, which is a training program for MDs, MBAs, and engineers to advance solutions that deliver improved value and patient outcomes worldwide. And of some of her recent accolades, she's been named a woman to watch in healthcare several times, and in 2020 was named a top 25 innovator by Modern Healthcare. So congratulations, a lot of great stuff going on. Let's start with your story. I'd love to hear just a bit more about how your passion for healthcare got started, Nobles, but even before then, I'd love to hear it.
Thank you, Alex. Yes. As a young girl, I had at least three experiences that really let me know medicine was the space for me. My sister, unfortunately, was in a very tragic car accident, and I became her caretaker. And one of my best friends' mom died of breast cancer, having four children, and the profound effect that that had on our community. And my grandfather got cancer, and it just seemed to be something that affects people. All of us seem to be affected in some way by cancer. And I wanted to see and commit to how I could contribute to the betterment of our communities, and in particular for cancer research. I went to Noble. All of that happened before probably eighth grade. I went to Nobles in ninth grade, pretty excited. My grandfather went there, my great grandfather. My grandfather just turned 94 this week. And so he's a proud Nobles graduate. Back then it was all boys. He liked to tell me as I was living in the trailer that they were in the castle. But yeah, so I had a lot of fun, and I had some people there who were really special to me, and I think helped embody the kindness and the things that I try to have in myself. And one was from a woman, Marian Dora Louise Howe Taylor, who was in the missions office, and she had an apartment on campus, and I couldn't afford housing, and so she allowed me to live with her in ninth grade, and she ended up doing it for one of my friends the next year. And it was just so nice of her to extend herself and her home so that I could get educated. And so it's always something that I remember. And I think to this day, I've always done things for students. So I have a program now for work study students, and it's something I always do. I was really close with the guys and Reggie, and there was a bunch of people at the time that really, I think, just showed me about education and commitment to community and to children. From there, I went on to Stanford, and both at my time at Nobles and I went to the Dublin School, and then at Stanford, I was always working in a laboratory. So I loved the combination of thinking about community and public health, but also the practical skills you learn in a laboratory were something that really set me up for later success. And at Stanford, I was lucky enough to run the Stanford Medical Youth Science Program, which later won a national award from Obama about the impact it had on first generation college bound students. So we would have very poor and very under-resourced students come to campus for 8 weeks, and we would design the curriculum. So part of what I did would be to try to help them to get ready and prepared for college. For SAT prep, we would get cadavers, teach them pathology and anatomy. And it was just great fun, but it had a success record of 100% of those students going on to college, and a few of them every year, usually going to Stanford. So I really always mixed the lab and the passion and the human together, and started to figure out what kind of career I wanted.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so, and your time at Stanford continued to shape your passions here. And you ended up spending, it sounds like, several great years at Sloan Kettering, one of the premier, certainly, cancer centers in the world.
Yes, I had the opportunity. Stanford had one of these exchanges. So you could go international or you could go to DC. And I was like, I wanted to go work for the Surgeon General. They set it up that you say your biggest dream job. So I actually had a colleague who said they wanted to be president of the United States and they got to intern with the president. So I said, well, I'm going to shoot big. I'll say the Surgeon General. And so I got to go and work at a time when Clinton was president and David Satcher was the first Black male Surgeon General. And they wanted to do a racial disparities look at our country and look at where we were affected by healthcare disparities. And that led me to meeting the head of the NIH, who became the president of Sloan Kettering. So great connection through school, great
Yep.
schools. And so I ended up working there in the beginning in prostate cancer. So it was a disease where it disproportionately affects African and Latino males. And it seemed to align with a lot of my values of where I wanted to put my time and effort. And I had a great time trying to be helpful to those men and to the investigators, the scientists, the doctors caring for the patients, all the way to industry. And it allowed me the beginning to see from patient care how many facets really affect our ability to deliver care. And so I was at Sloan Kettering for 13 years and moved up kind of every couple of years into a new role, taking on more and more until it wasn't just clinical trials, but it was basic science laboratories. It became hospital administration, putting in new operating rooms, running a brain tumor center, being the administrator of the Department of Neurosurgery, lots of different experiences that let me see both the research and clinical side, but it was always the researchers where I was finding myself wanting to participate. So that work and that translational work became my career, is to understand the translation of our science and bringing it to patients.
Well, that's great. And then you headed back out west, huh?
I did. Yeah, the sun was calling. I mean, I love New York City and I love Sloan Kettering. It's an amazing organization. But I always wanted to go back to California. I think I would take north or south. I like the state. But UCLA had such an amazing opportunity. It was going to be the first non-male, first non-doctor to be the president and CEO of the health system at UCLA. And it was going to be the first non-male dean of the medical school. And I just thought that was a pretty special time to be able to report for my first time to a woman. I had never done that, or hadn't done that in more than a decade. So to report to a woman who's not a doctor, just like myself, I just thought that would be an incredible growth opportunity for me to get that mentorship. And at the same time, we had the first woman dean of the School of Engineering and the first woman dean of the business school. And so I created a program that cross cuts across medicine, engineering, and business. And also due to the relationships I built with those deans and being inspired by them, it really has created my dream job, dream city, dream scenario for work.
That's fantastic. How did you get the idea to create this program?
I didn't create it. So Stanford created biodesign. Well, I would say TMC in Texas might claim it. They both seem to come on the scene about 2 decades ago with the concept of biodesign, which is to utilize medical business and engineering principles to speed the translation of idea to commercialization. And the way Stanford does it is through the School of Engineering. And that's a great place for medical device development. But I was inside the hospital and I was like, what if we flip the Stanford model and embed it into the hospital and let the hospital be the connector, the conduit to the medicine, business, and engineering schools and to the world. And so it took some championing. It took us to go do some visits to Stanford, to bring some people from UCLA there and to say, this could be a pillar of our innovation program at UCLA. And what I wanted to do, what Stanford did so successfully with Silicon Valley, I wanted UCLA to do with Silicon Beach, because 500 tech companies moved to Los Angeles. And we have the sun. So, over time, I think you'll see more and more tech coming to Los Angeles. And we're one of the premier health organization. So it just makes sense to try to create the partnership between industry and academia,
Mhm.
and then academia, government, all of our regulatory, and then venture. So it was a space I really had always been in, but was able to tie it together with a nice bow and create something real and get a federal grant to do so. So the Department of Commerce issued myself and a colleague, were co-PIs on a national grant to create an innovation hub for Los Angeles.
Hmm. That's fantastic. What are some of the specific initiatives going on right now within the program?
So every team, we do some 3 different tracks, but there's one track where they're teams of 4. And so they come and they do a boot camp, a crash course on biodesign kind of concept to commercialization in just 6 days. And then we do clinical immersion for 3.5 months. So this year, because of COVID, we picked infectious disease and
Hmm.
pulmonary
Mhm.
as the area that they would investigate and study and try to solve a complex problem within. Um, every year it can change. Next year, we're really going to still, infectious disease will still be really important, but we're really going to look at the heart because a lot
Mhm.
of COVID has affected the heart. And in particular, it was already a space where there's equity issues with women. So we want to focus not just on cardiology, but interventional and really try to also have them focus on women's health and cardiology. So we'll see. So
Mm.
every year it can change the lens. But this past year, the only way to really make it work was to just dive into the pandemic and to do work in that space.
Mhm.
It's been fascinating, a lot of hard work,
Mm.
but some great projects have emerged.
Mhm. Well, it's wonderful to hear. This is such a personal passion for you and so rewarding for you. And you're able to have such impact, not only on the community, but more broadly. So that's fantastic to get there in the end, right?
Thank you, Alex. Yes, no, it's fabulous. Each year, last year we had women working on vaginal drug delivery devices.
Mm.
So, it's only ever been sloppy creams or inserts, but there's so many advances happening in different fields. So bioengineering has done a lot of work in the dental space. And so if you
Mhm.
think about the mouth cavity and how there could be comparisons there for success,
Mm.
part of having a program like this is to start knowing all those different engineers and what they're up to, and then to look at what clinical
Mhm.
problems you're facing with your patients and start to connect the dots.
Mhm.
All of the experts are there, but it's a lot of work to try to figure out when you don't have that. They say the water cooler or the bubbler where you're bumping into each other. How do you
Yeah.
create those relationships? So it's almost like those hand-picked concierges for dating. It's like I'm a service where I
Yeah.
can connect people, connect experts, and then depending if they have a fantastic idea, I can give them the mentoring, the business
Mhm.
development plans, the finances to see it through
Mhm.
and to get it to a place where it could be out in the market and then coming back in to benefit our patients.
Well, there's a lot to be said for those collisions, right?
Yes,
Both in terms of our
absolutely.
personal lives and figuring out our personal paths, and then also professionally with innovation, trying to make those connections. So it's such a great story that you have. What advice would you give? So, of course, we've got a lot of Noble students who are really passionate about innovation and entrepreneurship, a lot who are thinking about healthcare and the industry and opportunities there. And then, of course, fellow graduates who may be thinking about doing more work again in innovation or entrepreneurship. What would you share in terms of maybe your personal path and what you learned to get yourself in a role that's so rewarding for you? And then also just any general advice or guidance you'd have about for aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs.
Well, I'd encourage it first and foremost. Healthcare is going to be a forever issue as long as humans are on this earth. So I think, in terms of actual critical need and the feeling that you get for helping and for impact, it's such a fantastic, rewarding space. And the collision, to use your word, with tech, with so many sectors, with finance, banking. I mean, there's so many private equity, but it's healthcare. There's so many ways to intersect what your interest is and to do it in a space that can profoundly affect change. So I hope that people will consider it. I do think that young people more and more, and I certainly think our medical students, they're actually demanding it. People want
Mm.
to be and have lessons, entrepreneurial lessons and guidance, and they want to create their own businesses or make their own mark. So I think there's actually a lot of demand for it. And in that case, you do have to figure out how to set yourself apart. And I always think that entrepreneurs, you don't have to take a no. It's awesome. Like if you are really impassioned, it's such a space where you can carry the torch, and it's tough, but you can carry the torch to whatever your vision is. I think there's lots of pivots that happen for people. There's lots of feedback that you're given. But to find those, like everyone says, find your great mentors. They are key. You see me still referencing my mentors from high school. I can reference my exact mentors from college. I'm still in touch with them to this day. It's a sincere relationship that has a bidirectionality to it. I have my mentors from work. I always think it's important. I tell all of our trainees now, when you go in these big rooms, I'm not into like work in a room, but to find a real connection. So if
Mhm.
you get the opportunity to be somewhere, find one or two people and actually have a 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 minute conversation, and make yourself memorable, and to get their information and stay in touch and be sincere.
Mhm.
So that's my advice, is really stick with it, stick to a passion. I hope, because we're in a place of privilege and get to go to such great schools and have such great networks, that people do feel a sense to give back and to feel a part of communities, whether they grew up in them or not, that we can affect change kind of more as a global citizen. So that's always really important to me to see when I'm trying to hire entrepreneurs and figure out who I want on my team.
Mhm. Such a great message, right? So much of it is asking questions and observing and experimenting and networking and making all those connections. And it's so great to hear how that's led you again personally through your life into your career, and also in the work you do on a daily basis. So thanks so much for being a part of this. Great to reconnect with you and to be able to share your story.
Alex, thank you so much. I'd love to hear from graduates who are interested in the SoCal area. I'm always available. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to all of you, thanks so much for listening. Really excited to bring Desert's story here today, and look forward to bringing some more stories of innovators and entrepreneurs in the Nobles community again soon. Thanks so much. Take care.